Well, good afternoon, Mr. Hengy, and thank you for um, being part of the interview process.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
And congratulations, of course, on your candidacy. So let me just start with a couple of basics. Where were you born and when?
So I was born in Garden City, Detroit, Michigan in 1961, though my first memories are of South Florida. I moved to Florida in the early 60s. I was probably in preschool when we first moved here.
Do you know why? What prompted you to move here?
My father's work,
And
yes, his job transferred him to South Florida here. And we had family down here also. So both my grandfathers were living in South Florida at the time.
so, if you're retired, are you retired now?
Yes.
And you retired from what jobs?
So I've been self-employed since 25 years old. I owned a contract printing company back in the early 80s. Um, we did contract work on apparel programs, both retail and corporate promotion. We had companies such as Sears, Kmart, J.C. Penney's that we did work for, Budweiser, Sports Authority.
Mhm.
We even printed Super Bowl shirts for the Miami Marlins when they won the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
And that I sold that company in 2001 and bought a retail operation in Sebring, Florida. Relocated from South Florida to Sebring, Florida. Had an opportunity from somebody that was within the same type of industry. At the time, my daughter was just born, and I was happy to get her out of South Florida into a quieter place. Sebring's population at the time was just like 10,000 people. So it was a small town, and everybody, it was like South Florida was when I first grew up, where
Mhm.
not only did you know your neighbors, you knew everybody in the neighborhood. And when we left South Florida, we didn't know our neighbors and didn't want to know our neighbors. It was so transient and everything. So was happy to leave South Florida, but then after the downturn in 2008, things got really tough there economically. Sebring is more of a retirement community. It's not a place to, you know, um, launch or grow or sustain a business. Um, and actually, in 2018, the end of 2018, I sold the business in Sebring and moved back to South Florida and started a fishing rod manufacturing company.
Mhm.
And so that in 2018, 2019, of course, COVID hit. So that kind of put dampers on things. We grew to a certain level, and come 2025, decided to retire. My fiance wanted to get out of South Florida. She was born and raised in South
Mhm.
Florida. Um, Fort Lauderdale area was like it was cow pastures and farmland when we first moved there, and we watched it grow into what it is now. I don't know if you're familiar with the Fort Lauderdale area.
Only in passing.
Yeah, so it's definitely saw a lot of different types of growth there. Some well thought out and some not so well thought out. Saw the same type of thing in Sebring. Sebring being a small town, I got to know the mayor there and some county commissioners and attended meetings. I actually was on a citizens advisory board that evaluated employees' performances and recommendations for advancement, either pay or positions. So I was familiar with the inner workings of local city government and actually county government with the commissioners. Um,
So it's all been Florida. All your professional life, everything
all
has
of
been
Florida,
Florida.
over 60 years, yes.
And you've been here since 23 or
No, since
25?
actually 25. Yeah, I've been here just a year. Yep.
And how did you choose Palm Coast particularly?
So we scoured the northeast of Florida. We looked, from Port Orange to New Smyrna to we even went inland, looked at DeLand. Um, we have family in Green Coast Springs, about an hour north of us here, um, and just really fell in love with Palm Coast. I mean, the well kept well manicured streets, and the size also not so much. It's not a Jacksonville or an Orlando, so the size intrigued us, and the surroundings. All the green spaces and stuff. We really fell in love. Also, really, a lot of people, we say the affordability. I mean, compared to some of the other places, we were looking for a specific type of home, which we found here in Palm Coast, and it was less expensive than the other areas that we looked at. And a lot of people question, the affordability of Palm Coast. And,
Yeah.
my answer is there's a lot of places in Florida that I can't afford to live in.
Right. We're gonna
So,
get into that. How would you overcome the potential criticism from voters who might say, well, Mr. Hengy hasn't been here but a year. How
yeah.
come he's already running for office when he should have,
So, yeah, my answer to that is there's 365 days in a year. And if you can't familiarize yourself with the area or local operations or see what's going on in 365 days, if it takes you longer than that, and then also the concern of the direction that we're heading in. I followed a lot of the city council meetings online, on their YouTube channel, and then seeing and hearing about, the rampant development, and just looking at it from a common sense type of situation that all the high density development, to me, it didn't make any sense.
what do you
I-
mean by the high density development, especially since you've been here since 2025 specifically?
so yeah, so what we liked about, we live in the L section, and most of the homes on the L section are at least on 10,000 square foot lots. Ours is about a third of an acre, so we liked how it was spread out. Down in South Florida, they have the zero lot lines where, you basically don't have a side yard. You have a front and a back, but you're butt up against the neighbors. And, I just don't view Palm Coast as needing to be that kind of community. For one, we don't have the jobs that would require high density development. I'm not against development. We need it economically. We need to grow. We can't be stagnant. I don't understand all of the high density. I hear talk of 2,500 square foot lots. Um, you know, I mean, why do we need that type, of situation? We
Where,
don't have the jobs here.
but where have you seen that actually happening? Because the overwhelming majority of developments, even now, the very, very largest majority of them are on larger lots. They're not that small.
Yeah, so there's a lot of the new developments around smaller lots. There's one right out here by us called what is it called? Lakeshore.
Mhm.
They're smaller lots. Basically, the ones out west. What is it? The Sawmill branch, just west of US 1. Smaller lots, and then also the proposed westward expansion. I read the MPD.
Yeah.
I didn't get the latest version of it, but I did read I think it was the second draft of it. And the switch from 12,000 homes to 22,000 homes, of course, the lots are going to be smaller. I would like to see more developments like this conservatory or like Grand Haven, um, ones that would preserve our property values. From
But
what
would you have been able to move into those developments yourself? Would those not have priced you out?
Those developments might have priced me out. Yes, that's why we didn't look in there for one. But my point for that, or my contention for that, would be, this is the first year in 14 years that our property values have decreased.
Mhm.
Part of it, is yes, the market is cooling off some, but now, the comps from these smaller homes being built everywhere, lower prices. I saw off of US 1, I think they have townhomes that are starting at 200,000, and then a lot of them like to tout, their prices starting at 300,000. I see how that makes it affordable for your regular working, class people. But it has had an effect in dragging our values down, or at least making our values stagnate because of the lower cost. I mean, they're building. I heard at one council meeting, um, one builder state that smaller homes would framed homes on smaller lots with single story or with single car garages are going to be more affordable. And, I thought, well, why do we need that? I mean, right now you hear everybody complaining about having to travel to St. Augustine or Daytona to find halfway decent work. Um, that's, usually high density or in areas like a Jacksonville or a Orlando, where your workforce um, is benefited by being closer to where their jobs are.
Mhm.
So I don't
Well,
see that here with us.
we jumped right into the meat of some of the material we're going to deal with a bit later, but just let me finish the thought. Because what you've described kind of brings up a bit of a contradiction. You want the place to be, you came here because you were able to afford a place that you could not have afforded elsewhere. But at the
Right.
same time, you don't want to see the sort of affordable or more affordable housing that might enable others to move in. How do you square the contradiction?
So th- there are, from my understanding, there are already 19,000 approved home sites. 6,000 of those are infill lots,
Right.
and 13,000 are part of the new development. Um, so those are already approved and already underway. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have, that a lot of those infill lots are being built on now, and
Yes.
a lot by builders, not by homeowners. They're the spec homes. Um,
And those are regular quarter acre lots.
those are, yeah, 10,000, or some of them are a little larger. Like here in the L section, there's some that are larger than the 10,000. But the average would be, I don't know if a quarter acre is quite 10,000 square feet. Um, Close to it, but yeah, that to me should be the minimum. Would be a quarter acre lot.
Hmm.
So
But
back to
how
your
do we make that
question.
affordable for folks like
So
you who want to retire here?
yeah, so I did a Zoom search, or not a Zoom, as a Zillow search, and I put in there for Palm Coast houses maximum selling price 300,000, and over 500, I think it was 546 homes are readily available in Palm Coast under $300,000.
Hmm.
So with that amount of homes available, and if you don't put a limit on it, there's like some 2,000 homes for sale. Some of them might be, to be constructed, but a lot of them are existing. And so adding all these new homes, I've seen houses in our neighborhood that were for sale before, when we were looking in this area, and are still for sale now. So how does all the new development protect, the homeowners that have been here or that own homes that are trying to sell them? I could understand if we had the workforce here. If we had a lot of industrial manufacturing jobs, we require a lot of people, and we're hiring tons of people. Shoot, the largest employer here in Palm Coast is the city. So I don't see the need at this time to focus on high density.
Actually, it's the hospital. The hospital is the largest private, and whether private or public, other than the school board, the hospital is the leading employer with well over 1,000 employees.
Okay, right.
Um, and then, so well, let's get back sort of to the beginning
Okay.
before, because we're gonna have a chance to talk about development again several times. But how have you specifically prepared yourself to be ready to succeed from day one as a city council member?
Well, I studied the charter, the city charter, and I studied the MPD that there's a lot of concern about now. I looked into the aspects of the DC blocks, what they're proposing, or which is already underway.
The data center.
The data center, yep, which from my understanding is a cable landing center. It's not like one of the hyper data centers that a lot of people are concerned about.
Right.
Um, I followed the council meetings on YouTube, even looked at past meetings. I went back to last year's budget hearings and listened to the different, um, challenges that they had with the budget back from the last year. So I don't know if that answers all of
Yeah.
your question.
Well, tell us about your character, your personal character. What might be a character flaw, um, and what unique perspectives would you bring to the council?
So I don't know if I could pinpoint a character flaw. Nobody's perfect. I'm sure, if you asked my fiance, she might be able to pick out some flaws.
What would she say?
What would she say a flaw? That I say you know too much, you know?
Well, I mean, a substantial flaw, like
Yeah.
something that really affects dynamics, relationships, your connection with other people.
Um, Honestly, nothing comes to mind. I mean, we have an excellent relationship. We're very compatible. I don't think in the 10 years we've been together, I don't think we've had an argument.
In your
Uh,
professional life, have you noticed something along the way that would trigger you or would cause you to have,
so
difficult responses to a coworker or colleague?
yeah, well, um, I guess one of my flaws would have been, which I think I've addressed now, is I have an extreme amount of patience now, but I used to be very impatient with impatient people.
Hmm.
And also with dealing in customer service in some of my businesses with the retail store and um, people that treat my people badly. I'm not a violent person at all, so there's no issue with violence, but um, I
When you
have been
get
known
some,
to.
yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I've been known to have the hair on the back of my neck raise up with unreasonable people.
But that happens on the council from time to time. There is unreason, there are tense moments, and if you've looked at past meetings, you've certainly seen how
Oh
sometimes,
yes.
there are difficult moments to deal with, but you're ready to, how would you handle some of those
Well,
moments?
from experience, I wouldn't say that I've had too many of those circumstances. I believe that I'm very rational and reasonable. Uh, I'm very, how should I say, very attentive to people's feelings. Um, I like to, let me think here. I like to listen and learn new things. I understand that there's differences of opinions. I like to deal in facts and not hearsay. Um, to see something firsthand or experience it firsthand to me is better than just being told. Uh,
So I guess that in part answers the rest of the question, which was the qualities you would bring to the council. What would some of those be?
I'm very analytical. Okay, I like to break things down and see it from a granular level. Um, I like to research, and again, that research bringing firsthand knowledge. I don't like to just go by hearsay. I'm a problem solver. I have been, being in business for 40 years. I've had to deal with not just employees or unruly customers, like we said, but equipment failures. Being in business for 40 years, we went through some various downturns. From some would call recessions to definitely volatile markets and stuff, and had to adjust and make changes to survive. Um, so I believe that the counselor that running the city is very much attuned to running a business.
Mhm.
Dealing and managing with people, dealing with budgets and balance sheets. In business, you can't outspend your revenue. You won't be
Yeah.
around. Seems like that's a common thing with cities is outspending. Uh,
Who would you, among all the local elected officials that who would you consider to be a model of leadership?
so, being here just a year, I really don't know personally, a lot of the leaders. Uh, I believe from watching the council meetings and seeing um, some interactions or seeing the mayor, Mike Norris. I believe that he really has his finger on the pulse of what the community wants, the direction that we want to be headed in. Um,
Now
I know.
you can be that way. You can have your finger on the pulse of a community, but would you also consider him a model of leadership?
I don't know his exact leadership. I know that he's got a military background. I know he was a drill sergeant. I know drill sergeants can be very abrasive.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know firsthand. I've seen it in movies and stuff. Unfortunately, I never was enlisted in the military at all. Um, so not knowing, exactly how he operates, just seeing snippets here and there. Um, Outside of that, um, I'd say some of the council members seem to be very astute. I don't know if there's anyone that I would pick out and say that they're standout, in my opinion. As far as the Flagler County Commission, I'm not very familiar, again, personally, with their operations. I haven't really followed the commission's meetings opposed to the city council here.
Mhm.
Um, again, just being a year and kind of focusing on the city itself, and wanting to step in and help guide, and protect
Right.
all of our.
What what letter grade would you give the city council at this point?
At this point, yeah,
Uh,
probably,
If we look at their performance in the past year.
yeah, the past year. So probably a D.
Wow.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some areas that that stand out as being a success, but all the turmoil, all the trying to oust the mayor, doesn't seem to be, it almost seems like it's us against them. Um, so I don't. I know in the past, from my experience and talking to people, that the council members are always been somewhat pro development. Of course, everybody, conspiracy, oh, they're all corrupt, they're all bought, this and that. May and may not be. I mean, I really don't know.
May or
Uh,
may not be. Are you actually I mean, do you
so I
actually
have
give
experience in Sebring of knowing firsthand the good old boy network. And there's a good old boy network in small towns and big towns.
Mhm.
It happens everywhere. And I'm not saying that it's a corrupt good old boy network, but it's definitely a network of individuals, either politicians or business owners or landowners that are in cahoots, that seem to make decisions to help each other. So,
But
you know,
might you have like an actual solid example of something that happened on the council that told
well,
you, oh well,
so
this is untoward. Here's a case of what you're describing.
the ICI homes, how they wanted to expand, the amount of homes that were already, approved. They wanted to add additional. I forgot what the exact number was. Was it
It was
20 homes?
it was to increase to 71, but it was to
71.
add I think 13. I think it was to add 13
Yes.
from the originally approved.
And supposedly it was for, low or affordable housing. Um,
Not initially. The initial plan was to just add the 13.
right. But the 13 supposedly were going to be pigeonholed for affordable housing.
The
Um,
whole at second reading is what we learned, what you described is at second reading the plan was to transform the entire project into more affordable housing for some professional
right. Yeah.
some
And
professional groups.
that seems to be a common talking point when talking about development is, affordable housing for teachers and nurses and first responders. And, you know, um, my, my question is, how many of those do we have here? I mean, I mentioned a
Oh,
thousand people work for the hospitals.
but before we get there,
Yeah.
I was sort of you were showing examples of where you thought that there might have been untoward or improper acts by the elected, and you mentioned the ICI project. You're saying that in that case there may have been something improper?
Well, the rationale for the decision, again, I don't know why the decisions were made. I just hear through the grapevine, again, and I don't like to base my opinions on the grapevine. I like firsthand knowledge, but on its face, it didn't seem right or didn't make sense to me. Again, to mention uh, first responders and teachers and so on and so forth. I mean, the 546 homes that are already available under 300,000 and the 19,000 homes to be approved that seem to start building at 300,000. I think we've already addressed that here. So for that call, I heard it said when they talked about the smaller homes with the one car garage for teachers and, first responders. And, you know, um, when I first started off in business, I couldn't afford a home. I rented for a while until I, built up enough um, worth and savings to purchase my first home. So it's not like you get a job or you start a career and you should be able to afford the house of your dreams. I mean, there's stepping stones into getting into your house. And with a career as well. I know many teachers, I wouldn't say so much, but first responders and the people in the medical field that do very well for themselves. Of course, they didn't start off there. You have to start off, and you need the training and the experience, and so on and so forth. But actually, doing very well for themselves, and even into retirement. You
As
know,
far as a degrade for the council, you're pointing out the issue with ICI, the development in the
that's
east,
one,
and
and
also
then
the removal of the mayor, the attempted,
attempted
the
removal of the
attempted
mayor.
removal of the mayor,
Yeah,
which followed, of course, his attempted removal of a council member
right.
was, I mean, you do see I mean, do you not see a problem with that part of that?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I mean. With the council, it seems like they're not working together.
Okay.
It seems like, again, it's us against them or, you know, four against one.
Has it improved?
Not that I've seen.
Not
Well,
even with
let me scratch it. I think it because we have certain ones that are running for further office. I think it has calmed down some. The rhetoric with the mayor and stuff. So it has calmed down because I think they aspire to move on to other offices and stuff. So that could be part of it. Um, and then I think they know that a few of them their terms are up, and um, I don't think anybody is running again. So.
Well, speaking of Mike Norris, do you see yourself as a check, a balance, or an ally of the mayor?
So definitely checks and balances, but I do agree with some of his positions. I think mainly the overdevelopment. I think we need to catch up with our infrastructure. Looking into these past bonds that we're taking out and uh, looking into the number, mainly water. Water is an issue for everywhere. And we're still in a water shortage. We're in a drought, and we have our water restrictions. The bond that was taken out to approve,
Hmm.
the water facility,
Yeah.
wasn't taken out by choice. From my understanding, the state made them upgrade because it was lacking in service. And then doing some research and doing some math, um, the upgrade is not going to handle the 19,000 homes that are already approved. And we're going to have a 4% increase every October through 2029 in our utility bills to help service that bond, but it's not going to cover what's already approved to be built. So are we going to have to take out another bond to do infrastructure for just our water here now? You
Well,
know,
I think I don't know that it's entirely correct to say it's not going to handle the 19,000 in the sense that the 19,000 aren't all going to be built up in the window within which all of the improvements that are going to happen over the next
understand
couple of
that.
years are going to
And,
take place.
and
There are
that being
still going
said,
to be further developments beyond
sure,
that, which would
yes.
require, of course, additional improvements. But the window of the bond itself and the improvements that are going to take place are going to address a substantial portion of existing and near future needs. Uh,
By the math, so there's a cup. Um, I wish I had my notes in front of me because the acronym stands for um,
it's water needs. It's addressing
consumption
water
usage
needs.
permit.
Right.
consumption usage permit. Right now, from St. John's Water Management, we're approved for 11.9 million gallons a day. Okay. Currently, we are using 9.3 million gallons a day. If you do the math on the homes that are already improved, the 6,000 infill lots and the additional 13,000 homes, it requires, I think, almost uh, 2 million, over 2 million gallons a day above what we're permitted to use and above our capacity. So if those homes are above our capacity, um, how do we prepare for those homes
But
outside of the westward development?
but those aren't going to be built tomorrow. They're going
No,
to be
not
built over
tomorrow.
a
No,
long period
gradually.
of time.
Right.
Right.
So
Right.
my point is, let our infrastructure catch up. Let's focus on getting caught up. And that's just water. Look at our roads. I mean, all our roads in the L section that I live in, all of them are cracked and splitting, and they even have you know grass growing up in the cracks throughout the whole neighborhood. But we lobbied for a what was $125 million bond to build that loop road.
It's
Um,
not a, it was not a bond.
no, it was a grant. Yeah, it was. They lobbied for the grant, and that was all the taxpayers in Florida. It's not just people in Palm Coast. But that money might have been redirected, you know, towards our water shortage or towards our existing roads, opposed to a new loop road that, from what I understand, is going to benefit the developers in that Westwood expansion, which they originally had said that they would pay for.
We're going to get to that in a moment. So
Okay.
let's talk about the strategic action plan. In your homework that you've done, have you had a look at the current strategic action plan, which is basically the list of goals that the council has?
Um, I have not. I
Because
have not at this point.
I was going to ask you, so if you were aligned, if there were a couple of examples with which you're aligned as far as the goals are concerned, and a couple that you disagree with, or,
So
or a couple that you would bring to the table. So not having looked at the strategic action plan, you might not, or are you able to address any of these questions?
not at this time, not from a knowledge standpoint. I mean, to me, a lot of it's going to be determined by this proposed new bill for the property tax.
Yes,
Uh,
we're going to, yeah,
yeah.
we're almost there. So
Okay.
aside from the strategic action plan that is in place, are there a couple of goals that you yourself would want to bring to
Economic
the,
economic development for sure. Number one, I would like to see. I would like to see development. I would like to see commercial development. I would like to see development on the north end of the town.
right?
Everything is built on 100 or on Palm Coast Parkway or that area along Belterre. That's where our worst road congestion is. Like for instance, the home goods. Um, I think a Home Goods on the north end of the city would have been perfect because a Home Goods is almost like a destination type retail store. My fiance and I drove to Jacksonville to go to a Home Goods and drove to Port Orange for Home Goods. And, so about a half an hour or 40-minute drive, 45-minute drives to go to a Home Goods. I think,
Well, that's certainly that's in line with what the council wants to do currently, but of course you can put the infrastructure in place, the roads, the water, everything else, and you can even approve, as the planning board just did, a big medical office building up at the north end, and the planning board members said this is great for the north end, precisely for some of the reasons you're describing, but you can't, as a council member, you can't force any companies or
no,
doctors or professionals
correct.
to move into that building. So how does that bridge get crossed?
Well, so it would be getting with the EDC and finding out what their goals are. I know we want to attract tech jobs or
We
higher
don't,
paying jobs.
we no longer have an economic development council.
Well, they like the tote the CRA as being economic development. So maybe it's getting with the CRA or getting
But the CRA, that's town center. That's the heart of
as
the
town
city,
center, and
right? That's not,
so that's
they
where.
can't go beyond their boundaries.
And that's why all the development is going on there. So
Right.
it'd be something to dig into and to address. From my understanding, we don't have the commercial land available, so it would have to be getting with some of these. landowners, to see. Um,
There
um,
is commercial. There is a lack of industrial, but there is quite a bit of commercial land. There's not
yeah, I
enough.
think industrial is three
Right.
percent. Three
It's
percent, yeah. But on
there's
the north end, from the maps that I've seen, there's very little for commercial. I think Matanzas Parkway and US 1. I think there's a small track right there that is commercial. It seems that they're building storage warehouses. I'd like to see, where the airport little strip mall that's got the Bronx Pizza or the
yes,
Cinco de Mayo. I'd
Airport
like to see
Commons.
something like that on the north end, to where I think that would um, kill two birds with one stone. For one,
I think one of the tracks for the development in your area, what used to be the golf course, one of those tracks is precisely to do what you're describing.
yeah.
But
So
of course, you've got to have a developer willing to build there
to
and to,
build,
right.
correct. But I
So,
think that would alleviate a lot of the traffic downtown there,
yeah.
um, along 100, and also provide jobs on the north end, and alleviate some of the problems that we're facing now with everything going on in that one area.
So, like you said, now this is a lot of what we're talking about, and the next 2 years is going to hinge on what happens with the Homestead Amendment. So,
Correct.
how will you vote on that proposed amendment?
I'm for it. I think it's a double-edged sword, but I'm for saving money. I'm for. I'd like to see the different municipalities cut back, tighten their belts. I mean, there has been a lot of overspending or undue spending. So we'll tighten our belts, and then if we are lacking in revenue, it'll be coming up with other ways of making up that revenue.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I like the idea that our homes won't be attached anymore. So in other words, you will truly own your home, and there wouldn't be able to be a lien put on it for any type of unpaid property tax. Now, property tax is not going to go away 100%. We have our
School.
schools and utilities or infrastructure. I mean, first responders and police force.
No,
So that'll
well,
never go
no,
away.
no, I mean, we don't have first responders and police force. In other words, the amendment would affect the general fund that pays
Yeah.
for everybody, including the first. Of course, half of the general fund goes to first responders and police, fire, police, and public safety, and so on. So there's definitely going to be some
Well,
significant
so I don't know if there'd be so
consequence.
much cutbacks, but possibly a break on expansion. Like I know the sheriff wanted to add 9 new deputies. I know there's talk about the 30, cameras, which that's Flagler County. That's not so much Palm
No,
Coast.
that's Flagler Beach.
The Flagler Beach, right?
But it's a minor expense. It's not in the scheme of things. It's not. But in any case, it's Flagler Beach.
Right,
Um,
right. So, yeah, I wouldn't
but you're
want to
saying
see.
that it's not going to affect current budget so much as expansion, but that's not what the math says. The math does show that it's going to reduce actual revenue into your general fund by somewhere in the range of, 40, 50%.
In year two. In year
Uh,
two, yeah. So, it's going to be a challenge, and we're going to find out where our shortcomings are going to come from, and how we make up the
well,
lost
how,
revenue.
how do you make up for it?
I would be not totally opposed to a sales tax. With the
Yeah,
sales tax, I mean, we have visitors here, tourist visitors that come. They use our roads and they use our infrastructure and they use
Mhm.
our facilities, and they could help pay for it. And also with the sales tax, um, you're not forced to buy something. It's your option. So I think with an increased sales tax, it helps some of these visitors offset the burden on just the local residents.
So you've basically answered the following question, which was precisely this, because the increase in the sales tax has been considered a couple of times in the last few years. It would be something that the county would have to do, or it could be also approved by referendum, but that's not in
Right.
the cards right now. It used to be actually, by the way, Palm Coast did approve one by referendum in 2012, and then it ran out. And it was that referendum that actually helped them do the roads and other capital needs. And then the county wanted to switch the formula to get a little bit more money for the county, and the city did not support it, so they stopped doing it by referendum. They now do it by vote, but it
Right.
reduces the ability of the county or the city to leverage that money and bond it. So that's significant, but they're still going to be considering an additional half penny. And where are you though on that half penny use for things such as beach management? In other words, to contribute some of that money to the county for beach protection.
Yeah. So, the beach is an attraction. It does bring tourists here, which in turn spend money here. They use our restaurants and they use the facilities, and um, they shop here. Um, so I mean, I'm all for preserving the beaches. I would like to make sure that wherever we raise and spend additional money, that it's not being wasted, that there's not wasteful spending, that um, uh, the contracts that are being signed, the bids that go out, different areas that make the most sense. I've experienced the sales tax in Highlands County in
Mhm.
Sebring. They had a half cent. Um, and they had an additional one on hotels also
Mhm.
too, um,
Yeah, it's
which
the tourist tax, right?
tourist tax,
That's
right?
in
But they
effect
did
for
have a half
us.
penny sales tax as well for the local infrastructure that was voted on and
So
passed. So
you would consider approving an increase. You would be supportive of the county if the county came and said, let's
yes,
increase by a half a cent.
if
Now,
if it's a
so-
matter of a need and not want, yeah. I mean, if it was let's increase it a half cent so that we can um, frivolously spend it, uh, no. But if it's for infrastructure, if it's to make up whatever shortcomings the general fund might have, well, then to me, that's a no-brainer.
So still in line with making up for the revenue lost from the property tax, Palm Coast is one of the very few cities in the state that does not have either a public service tax or a utility franchise fee, both of which our surrounding cities do have. And you can charge from 6 to up to 10% on your utility bills for either of these taxes or fees. Palm Coast has refused to adopt them or has declined or rejected adopting them 3 or 4 times in the last since 2012. Now, with this proposed amendment, that might bring the question up yet again. Where would you be on either of those fees or taxes?
So I'm not um, right off the top of my head. I would be against them. I mean, our citizens or our neighbors are already complaining about the utility fees and the cost of utilities and electric and um, I think that would be one of the last avenues. I think if everybody knew that it's a necessity that we must do it, uh, that it's something that might be difficult to get them to agree upon, but pointing out that we are saving in our property tax and we do need to maintain the quality of life that we all that attracted us here, that these are some necessities. Whether it be a tax on utilities or, I'm more of a fan on an increased sales tax. Again, if you're on a tight budget and, you're purchasing uh, what you must have instead of, what you want, you don't have to spend the money on the things that you want, the big screen TVs, which would be a higher tax rate. Your groceries are for the most part tax exempt.
Mhm.
So the utility fee is something that, out of necessity, I would be for, but in the very beginning, I would have to look at it very hard.
Okay. Now, the next question you've addressed quite a bit at the beginning when you went into the sort of developments that you're not in favor of. And the question goes to that. It's about the way that our population has continued to grow very rapidly, at least between 2020 and 2025. We added 16,000 people. You were
Yes.
one of them. And so the question is, how would you evaluate the quality and quantity of development in the last few years? And what sort of land use or development would you oppose? if it were to come to the council for a vote?
Um, I would oppose that the westward expansion as is proposed now. Again, I don't see the need.
Sorry, we're actually going to have a more direct question about that particular
Okay,
expansion coming up, but I was curious if you could direct your thoughts on the current, like, let's forget about the Western expansion just for a second, but about the
okay.
current Palm Coast. If you had land use decisions or development decisions that came before you for the existing Palm Coast, how would you address?
So now for existing, land use would be more of a preserving the green spaces. Being that we already have the 19,000 to grow into, already. I know the big increase was COVID related. It was that way with a lot of cities and throughout the country.
Mhm.
Um, I know it's starting to taper off now.
Yeah.
I know when we were looking in 2025, I think the average time a house was on the market was almost 100 days, 120 days, I think. I think it's a little lower than that now. But it has the the rate of growth has tapered off some, although we could see it if the property tax thing does go through. Of course, people moving in will have that 5-year window, but I think that would entice more people to move here.
Mhm.
But we do have a lot of infilling to do. 19,000, as you mentioned, are not going to be built overnight. If it were from 2020 to 2025, 16,000 increase, well, we're already prepared for the next 5 years.
Right.
So any more land use at this point would be more, maybe parks or just preserve green spaces. Or again, commercial.
As continuing along the same theme, also as far as existing Palm Coast is concerned, what percentage of housing stock should be single-family houses, as opposed on traditional lots like the ones you've described, as opposed to apartments or other multi-family complexes?
Well, I've seen a lot of apartments go up here, a lot of new construction on apartments. And it's funny, we have a family member that is looking to move from South Florida up to Palm Coast to be closer to
Mhm.
family here now, and they're actually looking at apartments. And there's a glut of apartments available. In fact, there's some units that are offering 2 months free rent to get people to move in there. It's one of the ones that they're looking at. And so um, I don't see the popular. Usually renters are for service workers type
Right.
situation. And again, going back to the jobs, um, if they're building these multifamily apartments and they're having problems filling them, why would you want to build more until there's a need for it?
Well, it wasn't long ago when we were talking in council meetings and community meetings about a um, serious crisis in the availability of rental space for working families. And I'm not. I mean, it's the first time I hear of a glut of apartment space right now. If anything, there might be a balancing going on, but a glut, I'm not so sure. You're saying that we don't need any more apartments in Palm Coast?
My opinion, at this time, we don't. I mean, if they're having problems filling them now, I actually just drove by today. Our daughter's friend spent the night, and we dropped her off.
Hmm.
She's over by town center, and there's a lot of those apartments in town center that are available. Um, and again, we have family members looking, and they see there's a lot to choose from.
They just opened,
So
of course. Yeah,
yeah,
they
yep,
just became available. Yeah.
yep. There's
So,
the one off of what is it, Viva, off of US 1.
mhm. Oh
No,
yeah,
that's not Viva. It's I forgot the name of it, but
just to the north
the
of
big sign
now.
says "Move in today,"
Right. Right.
and they're still building. So at what point, you said there's a leveling off, and they're still building. So at what point do you say, rather than approving more, do we take a wait and see approach?
Yeah. All right. Still along the lines of development, this has to do with Home Builders Association's lawsuit against Palm Coast. Are you familiar with it?
Right? Yes.
And
about the impact fees?
yes, right.
Yes.
So let's imagine that you were a witness in that case and you took the witness stand. On whose side would you be? Who would you argue for?
I would argue for the citizens. I would argue, for the city. I think the impact fees are only fair. Those impact fees are to help address the shortcomings in the infrastructure. My opinion is the impact fee should be at the maximum level, opposed to trying to knock it down to some, recouping, you know, impact fees from the city.
Are you
I mean,
familiar
what's
with
the
the
rationale? What's the rationale of trying to recoup impact fee money from the Builders Association? I mean, we know that we have shortfalls in our roadways and our water system and utilities. Why wouldn't I want to help contribute to rectifying that problem with the impact fees?
are you familiar with the argument that the HBA has put forth against the impact fees that the city approved?
The exact nuts and bolts of it, no. Just
Just, in other words, they were not opposed to impact fees per se. They were opposed to the degree to which the city increased impact fees. The city
uh,
made the argument that those were extraordinary circumstances, so they could go beyond the limits of the law, which allowed you to increase impact fees 50%, no more, unless you showed extraordinary circumstances such as population explosion,
right,
costs and building costs going beyond inflation and that sort of thing.
right.
And the city did increase these impact fees for fire, roads, and I think parks a little bit over 100% instead of 50%. So the HBA said, no, we disagree. We think that your math is wrong and that the justification for extraordinary circumstances is not there.
So
In
that'll be found out in the court of law, and
um,
hearing the argument from both sides. I mean, I see, of course, understand both sides, but there are 16,000 people in 5 years is a big increase. We already know our shortfalls in our water, and our roads.
mhm.
So I think both sides may have an argument, and it would be see how it weighs out in the court of law.
Where would you fall?
At this point in time, I would align with the city because I see firsthand our shortfalls,
Right.
our shortcomings. I mean, why wouldn't we want to address those?
Yeah. So now we get to the west side and the westward expansion. Obviously, you've read the master
The
plan
second,
development, the second
yes,
version, um, and yes, and there are additional versions coming. But in the main, you had it right. It's what used to be an 11,000 house or unit or housing unit plan has now doubled to 22,000. But the acreage has also increased very substantially. So it's not on the same amount of land. The acreage has increased enormously.
right.
Um, if not exactly proportionately, but it has increased. It's about 22,000 acres as well. But this is by 2020, the plan is for this to sort of build out by 2056. So you've already answered this, but the question was going to be, are you supportive of the plan as it stands today? And you said no,
So
but
a couple reasons, not just the one that I already stated was the high density development. Okay, I don't see the need for that.
but I'm
They
not
could.
sure that I saw the high density development in that plan because the plan as it stands now does not actually go into the details of densities in particular neighborhoods within
So
the.
the other point um, would be wanting the city to pay for the infrastructure, which their original plan stated that they were going to pay for the road, which is being built now, which they're not, and they were going to address all of the infrastructure, fire, schools, water, and and now they're wanting the city to come on board with that. And
Well, to some extent, they are obligated to build a lot of the infrastructure. They're going to be donating some land for like fire stations or schools, but and obviously they will be building the basic infrastructure for water connections and all of this. That's what their impact fees are going to pay for. But you were right on the roads. For instance, the roads and the sports complex that was discussed in the original plan, those were going to be built by them. Now they're saying, well, no, this is a different vision. This is a bigger complex that we did not envisage. and they've never quite addressed the fact that they're not paying for the major roads, but they're not. It's the state grant that is paying for that.
Right.
So in that sense, yes, they are assuming some responsibilities. They're not assuming some of the responsibilities that they had assumed previously in the previous plan. Um, so in that context, um, you're saying that you're not supportive of which parts?
Um, the I understand the timeline. It's not, again, like you mentioned with the 19,000 homes, it's not going to be done overnight. Um, the nuts and bolts of the infrastructure, you know, uh, there are parts that they propose to pay for, but there's parts that they want the city to step up and be obligated to also. We're already complaining about our rates right now for utilities, and they're already going to be increasing to address, where we're at now, as we discussed before. The total amount of people that will be impacting our roads here also, the existing roads at downtown area, or throughout the existing developments. I I don't know. I believe that we need a well thought out mission statement of what do we want. What do the residents of Palm Coast want the city to be? Do we want to be a Jacksonville or an Orlando? And have all of this massive development, which in turn, you bring in that many people, you're going to need, some sort of industry, you know, uh, to
Well, there's a
support
great
those
deal
people.
of, that's right. There's a great deal of one of the plans for the Western expansion is there's a very there's several million square feet of industrial. There's obviously a lot of
Be a bit.
commercial.
It's
Uh,
the if you build it, they will come. So, do they already have commercial? Do they have corporations that want to move here if it's built?
well, yes, that goes back to the earlier question where
Yeah.
you can
Just
certainly make it
because you
pretty, but
allocate it,
you
yeah.
can't force anybody to be
Just
there.
because you allocate it doesn't mean that they're going to, be flying in here. And for what reason would they fly in here? To be a part of the community, or of course, we're considered part of the Space Coast. So I think, high tech jobs and stuff like that. But I don't know if there's that volume of high tech jobs that would require us to evolve into a Jacksonville or an Orlando.
So as things stand today, if that MPD came before you as a council member, you would vote no.
I would like to see the final draft, but from my understanding, as of today, I would vote no, not at this time.
Okay.
Right.
Um,
I would like to see our infrastructure catch up.
well, I mean, that was kind of like the second half of the question, which was how would you balance the expansion with the needs in this side of Palm Coast where we are? Um, and you're saying that there is more to do on this side?
Yes. Our drainage, if people complain about the flooding and drainage, which, being in Florida my whole life, every area I lived in had drainage problems. Even after they put in sewers and tried to rectify. I mean, we're not that much higher above sea level. So at certain storms, I remember being a kid back in Lauderdale Lakes, tropical storm come through, and there were canals and drainage all set up, and the whole neighborhood flooded, and we were taking canoes to the corner store,
Hmm.
down the middle of the road. So
Well,
Florida's.
we talk about drainage problems, but specifically in Palm Coast, where have you seen those problems affecting homes?
So I've only heard, I haven't seen it firsthand. I heard there's certain areas that are low lying that people complain about the homes being added, being at a higher elevation, and the water runoff comes into their homes. So I haven't seen it. There are some areas here in the L section that during a heavy rain, the water would stretch across the street, but it dissipates fast
Which is as it's intended to be.
as it's
Palm
intended. It's
Coast was
designed.
built was
Yes.
designed that way, and there's been, I think, over the history of the city, there's only been like maybe a handful of homes that have had in-home flooding. It's very, very few. And the drainage committee that was set up in order to address some of the problems you just described, it seems, has taken care of a good deal of that problem.
Yeah, but there are still some areas that need to be addressed. There are still some, and again, I haven't seen them firsthand, so I'm going off of what, some people like to complain about anything. If their swale, gets flooded or it holds water for longer than they like, they complain. So
Even though it's intended to.
yeah, even though it's intended to, right? Exactly.
So
And before it can
speaking of
drain off, it fills up again.
and speaking of complaints and common complaints, traffic. So the next question
Traffic.
is about traffic. It's routinely one of the top complaints that you hear about, whether you're on or off the council. What would be your solution?
Would be to address again all of that development going on in that 100 corridor. It's already overbearing, and boy, the Walmart that they're putting there now, I would have liked to see that Walmart go on the north end of town. Alleviate some of that traffic there. I don't think that they have the space to widen the roads anymore. It is a state road, so that would be a state issue.
There is a long-term plan actually to go 6 lanes with 100. It's a little bit further
They
off, but it is in the works.
they need to, how long it takes for them to address the roads. They need to start now.
Right,
Prepare for it.
right.
Um,
Which,
Instead of after it's already done and after it's already a problem. It's already a problem right now. So why aren't they addressing it or starting to address it right now, especially in those areas that do get congested, which
mhm.
is where all of those retail, stores and uh, facilities are.
And you think the 6 laning will take care of it?
Well, it'll help.
Yeah.
It'll help for sure. Will it totally, if they keep building commercial there, if they keep focusing everything in that one area, how long will it handle it for?
And
Uh,
then the rest of Palm Coast, the way it's built and the way it's designed and engineered, there doesn't seem to be way that the city could alter traffic flows or volumes uh, from what we have now, and yet those 6,000 lots are going to fill up little by little, and that traffic is going to flow in there. So is there any solution you see to that mounting problem? Or is this, as some candidates have said, we're a city and we do have traffic, we do have congestion. This is what being a city is.
so you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Coming from Fort Lauderdale, I mean, my house was 12 miles from my office. In those 12 miles, there were 22 traffic lights. And to go 12 miles, it was a 6 lane road,
Right.
6 lane road, 22 traffic lights. It would take me to go 12 miles, it would take me 45 minutes. So traffic here really compared to where I came from is not, you know, but it's headed that way.
Yes.
So if we want to, address it before it happens, to me, it seems like economically it would be less money uh, to do it now instead of after the fact, or at least have plans developed to start it soon instead of after the fact. So that would help that area. And then again, too, I really believe that if we can move some more commercial retail opportunities on the north end, everybody here goes to those areas. I was at BJ's today,
Mhm.
so I was down in that area today because, that's where we have to travel to go there. Um, Same thing with the grocery stores. We've got Publix on Belterre and Aldi's, but everybody on the north end of town has to converge either on 100 or on Palm Coast Parkway, or there's areas where there is that major congestion. So I think if we bring, grocery and shopping and restaurants to the northern end, it will alleviate and probably draw some people from even those areas to the northern end to
Now,
alleviate some traffic there.
obviously, those private companies do their studies and see where best can we position our business, and they're choosing that area. You obviously wouldn't want the government to come in and say, "Well, no, we need to somehow have the businesses." They certainly can't be forced to be anywhere
No,
else.
they can't. No, no, but
So,
we could have incentives, for them to address it. Again, like I mentioned with the home goods.
well, that's an
Um,
interesting. I mean, what incentives might there be to geographically reposition businesses?
so it may be, for one, at one point I was expanding my business. I needed more warehouse space, but it wasn't a total necessity. We weren't at capacity, but it was something that I had to address pretty quickly. Um, the landlord came to me and had across the street. Uh, it was a facility, a warehouse that was like 15,000 square feet, which was more than what I really needed. But he knew that I was running out of space. So we came up with a graduated, it was my idea of a graduated type lease where in the beginning, I didn't pay for the full space. But towards the end of my lease, I made up for some of that in arrears when I grew in and had more capacity. So, not to say that these places would come in and lease
Mm.
space, or maybe with a developer. Maybe that's the thing with the developer that we say, hey, here's an incentive where, we'll encourage these people to open up here by offering some along those lines, maybe
Well,
help subsidize some of their,
town center has exactly what you're describing. It
yeah,
has these incentives for new businesses to come in
sure.
and locate
You know,
there.
I was part of a incubator program in Highlands County,
Mhm.
and the concept of an incubator program was great. Help in nurturing these small businesses into becoming a success. Most businesses fold within the first 3 years of starting. A lot of it is because they might not have, the knowledge or um, the help in succeeding. Um, that incubator program, in my opinion, was really just a glorified landlord. There were no incentives really to help these small businesses succeed, except at the time, there was no email. There were computers and stuff, but email was just getting started. And they had a common area. They proposed a common area where you would have a coffee station and a fax machine and a copy machine, and all
Mhm.
you people can have access to this common area, but you still paid the full force of the rent. You did get some mentoring, but not a lot. But mainly it was one of the people within the good old boys that built this commercial space that was trying to get it leased out. So it was more or less trying to attract tenants for a landlord than it was really truly an incubator program.
Mhm.
So I think if that's their in town center, if that's their goal, is to help nurture these small businesses and not just trying to fill rental space from the get go. I mean, rent is one of your biggest expenses. I mean, when I first started at 25 years old, my rent, I think my warehouse was 1,000 square feet and rent was $350. And I remember in the first week generating money to pay the rent, and it was exciting. Hey, 1 week, so we got 3 weeks worth of income to make up here. $350 right now doesn't sound like a lot, but in 1985, it was one of the biggest expenses
But
was rent.
other than replicating, and I'm not sure how they would, incentives for the North End, I'm still not very clear on how we might be able to, as a city, as a council, push businesses to the North End.
So be coming
Um,
up with the idea, planting the seed of the idea, and then overcoming obstacles to help make it work. For one, you mentioned, yes, these big corporations do their studies, traffic flow and everything. But if they know the intent or the growth or to develop more of that commercial area and to know, shoot, population is part of it. I read a um, investment memorandum for a company called Brooklyn Water Bagel Company. And part of their criteria to put up a new retail outlet was within a 4 mile radius to have 40,000 people within 4 miles. And Sebring population is 10,000 people, so it was out of the question there. But understanding it, in order for the model to work, they needed this kind of draw. Well, we have these developments out there off of US 1 right now that are going up, the KB homes and of course, we've got the Lakewood estates that are going up here. And then we've got where the sawmill branch, or
yeah.
I forgot the name of it, which I drove through that development, and there's going to be a ton of homes in there. So as far as having the traffic, and also US 1 is one of our major corridors through here. So to me, there's a few pluses of at least starting to entertain that development, that commercial development going out in that area.
Let's talk policing.
Okay.
You're familiar, obviously, with the police contract that the city has with the sheriff's office.
Yes.
So, 10 years ago, the policing budget was $2.7 million for Palm Coast, and the fire department's budget was um, 7.9 million. Today, the policing budget is $16 million, and that's um, today the budget for police is 13.6 million compared to 2.7 million. So it's increased 404% in 10 years. And the fire department has seen its budget increase from 7.9 million to 16 million, 102%. How is this defensible, considering that the population in that time period has increased 23%?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a very good question.
And how is it
That,
sustainable?
yeah, that's um, that I think is something that definitely would have to be taken a look at. And I don't know if that's part of the county. I don't know if that's in the council's purview,
Oh, this
to
is.
address it.
Yeah, this is
Oh,
actually
this is
Post's direct contract. And of course, the argument from the
okay.
sheriff, in fairness, is that, well, there's been many years when there were no hires and there was where the city and in fact the county were falling behind year after year because of a lack of proper policing, and that they were catching up in the same way that we've talked about catching up with infrastructure.
Right.
They're applying the same principle to policing, and that this is what has been necessary in order to bring up policing to current standards. But the
And,
question remains, as far as the budget that this is controlling, how is it sustainable to continue at this pace
and they want to increase it again too this year.
with what's happening with the tax reform, the potential tax reform, and even in the absence of tax reform, if even development were to slow down a little bit, how could this be sustainable over a
Yeah.
long period?
So, one thing, we are the second safest city in the state of Florida. So, um, there's, I guess, a benefit, but rationally, it doesn't make sense, the amount of money being spent. And is it wasteful spending? Does it all go towards, the actual force, the officers on the roads, the deputies? Um, you know, what part of this is overspending? Without seeing the sheriff's office complete budget, and the breakdown, of where this money is being spent. I noticed that there's going to be a lot of new transparency laws if this homestead thing is passed. I watched the video. I don't know if you saw it. DeSantis, he had an interview with some podcast hosts, and they were addressing these different issues. But there's going to be a lot of transparency, published transparency for citizens to sit down and see where every dollar is going.
Mm.
Not just saying, well, I mean, line item type transparency.
But as things are today, you don't have any specific example of anything where you would say this money is being misspent as far as policing is concerned, or do you?
Yeah, so I couldn't say right offhand. I mean, common sense tells me there's something doesn't, the numbers don't jive there. The as you pointed out, the percentage of population increase and the percentage of the policing increase. What part of that is capital expenditure? I mean, what part is actually workforce? Or police force?
These numbers don't deal with capital. These numbers deal with, just to take, capital beyond equipment and that sort of
Right,
thing. But it doesn't deal, for instance, with facilities.
right.
That's the county's business, and the jail. That's also the county. The county assumes those costs. No, this is police officers, deputies on the beat, patrol cars, that sort of thing.
You know offhand how the percentage of increase in the amount of deputies
Um,
from the same budget span
well, I mean,
10
this
years
is
ago?
mostly what this is mostly that's the cost of deputies. The cost of a single deputy now is somewhere in the range of $150,000 when you consider uh, salaries, benefits, equipment, insurance, everything, it adds up to just over $150,000. Plus, there's um, retirement costs and things like that. And mostly that's what we're talking about here. Um, again, the question is, you don't have an example of anything that is being you
No,
raised
I
the
don't.
question of misspending or something that didn't add up, but where specifically would you
Yeah.
see?
So no, I haven't had the opportunity to physically go sit down with the sheriff or with the various department heads to see or to hear an explanation for the increase. Where was the money attributed to? Why do we need more? I mean, I would need to know offhand. I haven't seen, firsthand being here a year.
Mhm.
I, getting up to speed with the past workings of the councils and then also with the development issues and stuff. I haven't had time to really focus in on the sheriff's office or the fire department.
And the
I
numbers
noticed the new,
aside,
I'm sorry.
the numbers aside, you're satisfied with the policing in the city, or
Well, so yeah, I mean, look at the track record. Yeah. I
right,
mean,
right.
being the number two in the state, I mean, that's definitely going to attract people to live here.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we sourced out, also, or what we liked about Palm Coast. Now, the fire stations that are going up and stuff, you know, beautiful facilities. Um, is that is there a need to have a shining star facility for a fire department?
As
The
opposed to
aesthetics.
as
Well,
opposed to
part of the aesthetics instead of the mechanics. Of course, we want all the update capabilities in a facility, and in equipment. But the facade, the design, the structures themselves. I mean, they're beautiful to look at. Uh, you know, how much is it worth?
well,
So,
they've also made them, the design is part of what has also made them healthier places for firefighters to work in, which was not always the case, and firefighters were paying the price of
yeah, I'm talking about more about
well,
the facade of it, the looks from the outside, the big,
yeah,
large, station numbers, the need for something like that. I see,
well,
it seems like the more revenue a city takes, the more they spend. It's like there's none in reserve. In fact, I heard recently that there was some $1 million saved on a parking lot project. And then the next word
where was that?
was I think it was at the Indian Trails Sports Complex. I think it was budgeted for $1.5 million cost, and it came out to a half a million. And there's $1 million sitting in
Oh,
the coffer, and they're like, "How are we going to spend this?" And they were just talk about a skate park,
hmm.
And so I thought offhand from what I read is like, why is it gung ho to spend $1 million? Why don't we, with what we're potentially being faced with, why doesn't that go into a reserve or something at this point? And let's see where everything nets out to be if this property tax bill passes.
Right.
So it seems
I'm
like,
not. I'm sorry. I'm not very familiar with that issue at Indian Trails. There might be a case of a particular kind of revenue that can only be spent in a certain way that could typically be park impact fees, which can't actually be shifted from park spending. So if it's in the pot for parks, it has to be spent on an expansion of parks, and a skate
so
park might be what they would have in mind. It's not so much, well, how do we spend it just because we have it kind of thing.
well, so I mean, couldn't they keep it in the Parks and Recs reserve? Couldn't they have a
Well,
reserve fund?
but they certainly can't support the Parks and Rec budget for operations. They can only use if it's impact fee money that we're talking about, they can only use it for an expansion of one sort of
Yeah.
or
I'm not sure if it was impact. I'm not sure where the
pretty
money
much.
derived from, if it was from impact fees, but I understand, yeah, that it can only be used for certain things. Um, is a skate park the right choice?
Yeah.
I haven't, in the whole year I've been here, I haven't seen one kid on a skateboard. I've seen them on e-bikes,
Well,
but I haven't seen,
the Wadsworth skate park in Flagler Beach is very popular.
is it?
They just improved that quite a bit, and it's always been very popular there. Yeah, and
Yeah, they built a skate park in Sebring. They spent a lot of money on a park because skating at the time. In fact, I had a skate shop as part of my retail store, to address these skaters. And it was a hit for maybe 3 or 4 months. And skating has somewhat gone by the wayside from what it was back then. And, now it sits empty. So,
So you've been very patient and you've made it through. There's last question is not difficult at all, although it's a bit of an annoying question, and it's about your legal past. And
yeah,
have you ever been
yeah,
charged with a felony or a misdemeanor anywhere
yeah, the answer is no to all of those.
to all of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And including civil bankruptcies, all of that.
Yeah. Never filed bankruptcy.
Investigative
So, no,
issues with professional or trades or anything like that.
no.
So, and that about wraps it up.